Good afternoon. This is Lee Einsweiler with Code Studio. Hoping you're going to enjoy your little field trip today. I wanted to talk to you a little bit in advance of the field trip, make sure that you're looking at the right kinds of things as you travel around with the city staff, the town staff. Just a quick reminder, the overall project goal here is a plan amendment with regard to the character of the mixed-use centers across the entire town, and new zoning, probably form-based, for those center areas. That new zoning might be just the text that enables the districts, but it might also include map changes in the future which would allow the new zoning to be specifically applied in those center areas. So you're involved as a committee in helping serve as a sounding board for us as we develop that material. So part of the reason that we wanted to take you out today is so that you could begin to understand how to see things as we see them and begin to see the town perhaps with fresh eyes as you tour around. I'm showing here in the background an image of University Place near the University of Buffalo there, just to the west of the university. Little mixed-use project here sitting in the center. And I wanted to use it as an example of how you might begin to look at one of these areas. So there's a series of things we would want you to look at when you consider these places. Some of them have to do with the broader context that the actual center is sitting in, and some of them have to do with the very specific site planning for a given building or a set of buildings on a specific site. So I'm just going to talk to you for a bit about those. First and foremost, the idea of a block. In this case, the closest thing we have to a block is to go all the way through this parking lot up here and down along the main road and then back up the back road. Not really a set of formal blocks and streets in this area. So one of the challenges clearly here is access and connections. In fact, there's very good access directly into the center of the project, but to reach the next project to the south, there appears to be no connection in between the two sites. And in fact, you have to go back out on the major road, even though the project is immediately next door. Thinking about those access and connection questions when you're on these specific sites. I think also the transitions between one project and the next. Is this sitting next to single family? Is it sitting next to multifamily? What is the relationship between this project and other adjacent development? Another element is what's the relationship between the project and the street? In this case, you'll see that there are drive aisles and parking between the buildings and the street. In many cases, older Main Street type settings, of course, the buildings sit immediately adjacent to the street. And typically the street itself is a narrower, more modest roadway than the one you see in this example. Some of the site planning issues. Clearly, total height of the building is going to be a site planning issue. Location of parking, is it to the side, to the rear, or is it actually lying between the building and the street? Things like entrances to the buildings, are they easily reached by sidewalk from the adjacent roadway, or are they a bit problematic walking through the parking lot, for example, to get to the entrances of buildings? How are those sidewalks placed? Can I actually reach adjacent development along the sidewalks? In this case, that's one of the few elements that is actually easier by foot than on a car, is to walk between them. You might also look at elements that we might regulate, such as signs and perhaps some of the architectural character. So those are a few of the things that you might be looking at as you're actually looking at these buildings. I also wanted to remind you that really we are ranking possible sites for testing during the charrette this coming fall. So part of your committee is to make a recommendation. We'll help you with those ideas, but we want you to help us pick some of these sites as the best examples. And part of what we're talking about here is whether there's a significant disconnect between current zoning and future vision. That would suggest, of course, that we need new zoning in place. So, you know, if zoning and the vision seem to be pretty well in sync, then maybe we don't need to test that area quite so much. The likelihood that a site will redevelop is new construction already taken place in this area. So, as an example, University Place that we were just looking at, it's unlikely to change in the near-term future. These buildings were relatively recently built. We are not likely to replace those multi-story buildings anytime soon. So when you think about historic character, tenancy and vacancy in the buildings, etc., not an issue for University Place, but perhaps for other parts of town. And then very important, the notion of transferability. If we figure out new zoning using a given site as a prototype, is that zoning likely to be usable in a variety of areas around town? That's definitely one of the keys. Finally, when you're thinking about these sites, we think there's a variety of different kinds of places you might be looking at, and hopefully staff is going to give you a chance to see some of those, at least as drive-bys, if not on foot, while you're out and about. So think very hard about the places with deep, large parcels along the corridors, places along those corridors that might have shallower parcels and therefore be more problematic to redevelop. The edge of Williamsville, whether either east or west of the town, and how we might think about those shoulder areas and whether those shoulders become very much like the town center, extending it out, or whether they have their own character. Some of the traditional nodes, Eggertsville and Snyder, are great examples of the traditional nodes. Perfect place to look at. I know you'll be looking at some of the newer suburban nodes and the likelihood of redevelopment or infill development in those areas like Clearfield Plaza, the center at Dodge and Hopkins. Finally, hopefully you'll glance at an office park as you go by and think a little bit about whether future office parks on that sort of single-use model should continue to exist, or whether we should start to encourage mixed-use development in some of those office park locations. So that's a series of ideas we hope you'll be looking for as you're traveling around on your site visit. I hope you enjoy it. I look forward to talking to you when we get a chance soon. Thanks. Bye.